I did want to welcome everyone to our program tonight, How Things Work at the Ohio Statehouse. My name is Carol Benton. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters. We at the League of Women Voters believe the best way to make democracy work is to help more people. It seems to be on a timer. All right, I might just yell. Is to help more people participate in it. Politicians get more accountable, citizens get more invested, and our government gets more effective. That is the reason we're hosting this program, to help Geauga County. I know, it's not working. All right. It kind of goes in and out, so I'll keep going until whatever. So let me repeat. I'm going to start back a little bit. We at the League of Women Voters believe the best way to make democracy work is to help more people participate in it. Politicians get more accountable, citizens get more invested, and our government gets more effective. That is the reason we're hosting this program, to help Geauga County residents better understand how the Ohio government works. The perfect person to explain. Yeah.
Just
Perfect.
keep talking.
Yeah.
Go in and out.
Sorry. Now it's probably on, but the perfect person to explain this is our speaker tonight, Rachel Coyle. Rachel delivers advocacy training and educational content focused on the Ohio Statehouse, the legislative process, and how individuals can influence Ohio laws and public policy. She is the co-founder of How Things Work at the Statehouse and serves as program director at Ohioans Against Extremism and as the policy director at Honesty for Ohio Education. She recently was the state lead for the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy. Rachel also has a Substack column on how things work at the Statehouse. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and political science from Ohio State University and a master's degree in political communication from American University. Before we begin, I have a couple quick administrative notes. First, Rachel will take questions at the end of her presentation. When you checked in this evening, index cards were available on which to write questions, and we can pass some around as well. If you have a question, write it on the card legibly, and then just raise your card, and one of our question runners will pick it up. We will review the questions for clarity and relevance before we pose them to Rachel. And lastly, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. Any views expressed this evening are solely those of the speaker. So with that out of the way, Rachel, thank you very much for making the trip up here from Columbus this evening, and I'll turn things over to you.
Hey. Oh, I think it's working. There we go. Okay. All right. Thank you all so much for having me and getting over a cold. So we needed the microphone tonight. All right. So my name is Rachel Coyle, and I am so excited to be here tonight to tell you about the Statehouse. It is my favorite subject, and I have been doing some version of this training since 2016, which is now a decade. That is insane. And it has really evolved over the years, especially because of the political dynamics. We no longer can just teach you how a bill becomes a law. We have to talk about the people and the politics of it. And it's also now got a whole slideshow because during COVID I had to learn how to do it online. So everything has changed. I'm really excited to show you this tonight. And basic introduction, 1, do not worry about memorizing anything. I am going to send you everything that I have. So I'm going to send you the slideshow and all the websites and all the links. Everything I talked about tonight will come to you as long as the event organizer has your email. So I know there's a sign-in. If there's a way to send your email to them, please do that, and then I will get everything to you. Also, don't worry if you are new to state-level politics. That is very, very common. We don't learn about it in school. They don't talk about state politics. It's rarely in the news. So a lot of people come to these trainings with very little expertise in this area. But also, if you are someone who's already been involved at the state level, hopefully you'll get some tips and tricks out of today as well. And then also, lastly, there are no dumb questions. I guarantee that if you have a question, half the room has it too. So I want you to ask your questions. I want to be able to give you the information that I promise you other people in the room have the same questions, have the same confusion. Please feel free to ask. All right, so what we're going to talk about tonight, first we're going to talk about why you should care. Because I have learned over the last couple years, the world is on fire and everything is very overwhelming. And people often say, you know, I respect that you care about state government, but I can't. There's too much going on. There's climate change, the actual world is on fire, there's Congress, there's too much. And so I have to now start the presentation by explaining why, unfortunately, we also have to care about state governments as well. And then we'll talk about some Statehouse basics, so a couple terms you need to know, but also the political atmosphere, some of the key players, people you need to know. Then we'll talk about the actual process, how a bill becomes a law and where you can insert yourself into that process. Then I'll give you some resources, which I promised to email to you. And then a couple key bills, but mostly I'll just show you how to find the bills. And then we'll do some Q&A. All right. So I really have become convinced that state governments are more powerful than federal government, which is a controversial statement. But even if you don't agree with that, you have to care about state governments, even if you only care for one reason. This is it, redistricting. The people at the state level are the ones who draw the lines that decide who get to go to Congress. So if you care about Congress, if you care about Washington, D.C., and if you care about who gets to go there and represent you there, you also have to care about state governments. They're the ones drawing those lines. We know that the U.S. House of Representatives would be controlled by a different party right now if a few districts had been drawn differently in North Carolina. That is power. That would change the entire dynamic of the world we're living in right now. We also know that President Trump came out and publicly told Republicans in states like Texas to draw him more Republicans in Congress. He knows the power of the state governments. And so that, again, that is a power, the ability to decide who goes to D.C. We have to care who's drawing those lines. Another reason, so this is a nonpartisan presentation. I will tell you that the folks on the right figured out a while ago that there is power at the state level, and the folks on the left are really still catching up. So there are actually entire organizations on the right dedicated to organizing at the state level, so that they don't actually have to pass a lot of bills through Congress. They can pass the same law through 30, 35, 40 states and get pretty much the same agenda accomplished. It is incredibly effective because there's so much less pushback at the state level, and you can do it with less money, you can do it with less attention, with less of a fight, and you're also moving the conversation to the right when you do it this way. It is brilliant. It makes people look around them and they see the same bill passing through 20 states and they think they're the person who's out of touch, that maybe everybody else has moved to the right on an issue, when actually it's just this well-coordinated effort at the state level. It is brilliant. The most famous version, oh, mine went out too, of this project on the right is called ALEC. So this is the American Legislative Exchange Council. They are the ones who, they literally write conservative pieces of legislation, and then they feed those bills to a Republican legislator in every state house across the country. Their most well-known bill, although you may not know it is theirs, is Stand Your Ground. Well, Stand Your Ground laws are an ALEC law. They started in Florida, and then they fed them to states all across the country. Ohio is now a Stand Your Ground state as well. And by the time people realized what was happening, many, many states across the country had already become Stand Your Ground states. It has moved the entire conversation on guns to the right. There is no longer the ability to have a debate about universal background checks, because we have to just debate things like Stand Your Ground, like when it's okay to shoot first, ask questions later. It is a fascinating discovery that the folks on the right figured out, that the folks on the left they don't have an ALEC on the left. There is not this coordination happening on the left. Let's see if I can press this again and see what happens. Yeah, did that work? Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
you got it.
Okay, so another reason you have to care about state governments is local governments. So everybody gets mad about things at the local level. You get mad about potholes. You get mad when there's too many levies on the ballot. You get mad when the parks aren't taken care of, or when police and fire, aren't responsive enough, for lots of different things. that a lot of times people will they'll get mad at their mayor or their city council when actually the problem is state government, lack of resources from the state. That is a big issue here in Ohio. So here in Ohio we have,
This is more dependable, they said.
cool. Next time it goes, now it's out now. Okay. So in Ohio we have what's called the local government fund, and it is a percentage of the state budget that is your tax dollars that are supposed to come back to you to pay for things like police and fire and filling those potholes and taking care of your parks. And in 2011, the state legislature actually drained the local government fund and used that money on state stuff, and they never put the money back. So over the last 15 years, Ohio's local governments have been starving. And they have been trying to make up for some of this money in lots of different ways. Police were actually sent out with quotas to give people tickets to make money for the city until just this past year. So there were a lot more police on the roads, a lot more tickets. Potholes were allowed to stay out longer, and they were filled with less quality materials, so the roads were worse. We all notice these things, and we don't know who to blame. There's more levies on the ballot. There's speeding cameras and traffic cameras, and the police and fire response times are slower because there are fewer of them. It is dangerous. And again, people don't know that this is tied back to the fact that the state government is no longer sending back the money, your tax dollars, to do these services for you. So people blame their local government, should be blaming the state. So I am going to give you a ton of information tonight, but if you remember only one thing, it is this. I need you to remember how much power there is at the state level. You can do so much with just a few people at the state level. You do not need to know 1 million friends in order to make a difference at this level of government, because so few people pay attention to state government that a small number of voices will make a lot of noise. That is a good part about this. The bad part is that if you don't take action at the state level, it only takes a few people with a really dangerous idea to get their thing across the finish line. So you have to use this power, or else someone else is going to use theirs. So this is a lot of text, but it's just basically a reminder to myself that we have made a lot of advancements. A lot of things have been made better at the state level over the past couple of years because of advocacy at the state level. I'll tell you about a couple of them that I'm especially proud of. One, Ohio passed a law in the last year that is now helping people in jails and prisons, inmates in jails and prisons, get licenses, get IDs, so that when they get out of jail or prison, they can actually find a job, and they can find housing, and they can vote, and they can participate in society in a way that will help prevent them from ending up back in the system. It is wonderful for those folks and for their families, but it also saves taxpayers a ton of money. We save money when people are not going in and out of the prison system all the time. That tiny little change is impacting lives. Another one I'm really proud of is Ohio insurance. All insurance in Ohio now has to cover hearing aids for kids, for actually everyone 21 and under. Before this law was passed last year, most insurances considered hearing aids to be cosmetic, and so they would not cover them. It is gross, I know. And so now, because of that law, Ohio, we'll never know. You're never going to hear in the news how many kids got access to hearing aids every year, but just know that lives are being improved. If you're in politics, so you want to make the world a better place, the state government is often the way to do it. So now we're going to talk through a couple terms you need to know, and then also some of the atmosphere, some of the people that you need to know as well. So in Ohio, General Assembly is a big term you need to know. The Statehouse in Ohio is called the General Assembly, but it also operates in 2-year terms. That's a big deal. Those are called General Assemblies, or GAs. The 2-year term means any bill that's introduced only has that 2 years to go through the whole process. House, Senate, governor, signed into law. And if a bill gets even most of the way there, but at the end of the 2 years it hasn't become law, it will die and has to start completely over again as a whole new bill in the next GA, in the next 2-year term. So that leads us to this next term, lame duck, where at the end of every 2 years, there is a period called lame duck where all the politicians at the Statehouse know that all their bills are about to die. So they run around like crazy trying to pass everything they possibly can that they have introduced for the past 2 years all at once. It is madness. They know it's going to be madness. They tend to hold their most controversial stuff for lame duck because so much is happening that they know some things are going to slip through the cracks. And Ohio has the worst possible timing for our lame duck session. It occurs in November and December of even-numbered years. So this November 5th, the day after the election, is going to be our lame duck session here in Ohio, which is very unfortunate because everybody is going to want so desperately to turn off their TVs, turn off the news, spend the holidays with their loved ones, when actually it's going to be the most important time to be paying attention to our state legislature. So if you have not yet made your 2026 holiday plans, I would love for you all to mark in your calendar that we need to be working in December, and then in January we can all go on vacation. And then another term to know is session. It has two meanings. One is the time of year when the Ohio legislators are working. Technically in our state it's a part-time job. And then it's also the times when they're physically at the Statehouse voting on bills. Both of those are called session. Another term you need to know in Ohio is supermajority. So this, again, nonpartisan presentation. Supermajorities of any party are bad. Any party that has this much control, where they get rid of checks and balances that we all learned about in junior high, is a problem. It leads to extremist policies that nobody asked for. It means that one party controls the Ohio legislature or the legislature without any step along the way where someone can step in and tell them that something's a bad idea, or that something is not scientifically accurate, or that something is not possible. And so we in Ohio are seeing a lot more bills that even your most conservative neighbors did not ask for. So what it actually means is, here in Ohio we have a Republican trifecta, so all three branches of government, and then the legislature has a Republican supermajority. So there are so many members of the Republican Party at the Statehouse that if Governor DeWine, also Republican, decides to veto a bill, and he has done that several times in recent years, they have enough votes to override that veto and force something into law all by themselves. It takes away the checks and balances. It takes away the ability for other branches of government to step in. And it really creates a dynamic where a lot of times bills are coming out that are very unpopular polling-wise with the public. So these are the current leaders of the Statehouse for this 2-year period, this GA. The people at the top are the Republicans, so they're the majority members, and then the folks at the bottom are the Democrats, the minority. But the person I really want you to focus on is the gentleman at the top right. That is Matt Huffman. He is the Speaker of the Ohio House, and he is the most powerful man in Ohio. This man controls the state of Ohio, and almost no one knows his name, and he loves it that way. He is brilliant. He is very, very good at concealing power. He has been around for a long time. He has been amassing these friendships and this money and this ability to control the state and his own party in a really impressive way. One example, the Ohio Republican Caucus, the House Republican Caucus, usually raises money into the Ohio House Republican Caucus Fund. This year, they have largely been raising money into the Matt Huffman Fund, and he doles it out as he sees fit. He has lots of little ways set up to make sure that everyone does exactly what he wants. Every bill that is passed in this 2-year term will be his decision. Every bill that fails or does not move will be his decision. If you want something done, Matt Huffman has to approve it. He also had the House pass a bunch of new rules to give himself even more power. As some examples, he gave himself total control over all the committee assignments. So, leading a committee comes with prestige, it comes with a pay bump. His colleagues want to lead committees. And if he doesn't like you or you make him bad, he could take you off the committee, he could replace you. He also gave himself the power to fire other people's staff. Just a little thing to hold power over his colleagues. And the Senate President, Rob McCauley, is, Matt Huffman brought him up and put him in that position of power. So Matt Huffman technically controls both branches of the government in Ohio. He is incredibly powerful. Another thing he has been doing, like people who like power, he does not want the public to participate in the process. So one thing he did at the beginning of his term was he told the press that he was going to be banning people from standing outside House chambers during votes. That is not an official rule. It is not voted in anywhere. It is not written down anywhere. What he's been doing is increasing the police presence outside the House chambers during votes to try and physically intimidate people into not being there. And that is a problem, because if anyone from any party tries to stop the people from participating in the process, that is a bad thing. That means they have something that they don't want you to notice, that they don't want you to see. So what we need to happen is the opposite of what he's hoping for. He's hoping we feel like it's impossible to pay attention, it's impossible to go to the State House, so we just stay home. We actually need to show up more often in larger numbers and be louder to show him that he cannot prevent the people from participating in the process. The great thing is, though, again, you do not need 1 million friends to make noise at the State House. You can be so loud with just a few people. It's very, very simple. So these are actual photos and articles from this year, or this past year, from a bill that you may have heard about, Senate Bill 1. It is now a law in Ohio. It is radically altering how our higher education system looks in our state. It is radically altering what our colleges and universities can discuss in the classroom, what student speech looks like. It's really restricting student speech. It got rid of a lot of worker protections for educators, so a lot of professors lost tenure, that sort of thing. It is radically, radically altering our colleges. So this bill, when it was announced, they held a press conference to announce the bill at the State House, and about 25 students showed up to protest outside the press conference. They didn't go into the room, they stood out in the public halls of the State House. They had shirts and signs and they were chanting. But the legislators didn't like it because you could hear the chanting on the TV cameras. So it ruined the vibe of the press conference. So what they did was they sent out a police presence, you're sensing a theme, to try and intimidate the students into leaving. But instead what happened was the press came and they took pictures of the kids and they interviewed them and they wrote stories that were not just about the bill, but about the bill and the fact that students don't like it. So from day one, with just 25 human beings at the State House, we changed the entire narrative around this bill. There was never a time when they were able to write an article saying that this was a popular idea, that Ohioans wanted this, because everybody knew that wasn't true. And every time reporters wrote another story about Senate Bill 1, they pulled these photos back up and used them again. With 25 people going to the State House, you can change so much. It is that easy. So this has actually become a big part of our strategy at how things work at the State House, because a lot of times we are fighting losing policy battles, where if you and Matt Huffman disagree, your thing is probably not going to get done. And people oftentimes are like, why do I care then? Why do I keep fighting? And this is part of my answer. We call it losing loudly, and basically the idea is, if you're in politics for the right reason, if you want to make the world a better place, you want to make good things happen. That's pretty obvious. If you can't do that, you want to stop bad things from happening. That's a reasonable second goal. But everybody always forgets the third part, which is that if you can't stop the bad things from happening, you have to let people know who's doing the bad things, so that over time, very, very slowly, you build up a public memory of the names of the people who are harming your communities, of the people who are making things more expensive or taking away programs that your family uses, so that slowly, slowly, someday people will go to the ballot and they'll see Matt Huffman's name and they'll think, you know, I'm not sure I like that guy. And they won't even know why, but they'll know they've heard his name in a negative context for year after year after year. So we call it losing loudly, and it is critically important if you ever want to win anything ever again, any policy fight ever again. So a big part of our strategy as well is reminding people that politics is psychology. Politicians are people, and so much of what we do has to do with remembering that they are people. People want to feel cool. They want to feel liked. They want to feel popular and powerful. They will surround themselves with people who agree with them because it is incredibly uncomfortable to be in a room full of people who hate you. So that is why your legislators will limit testimony. They will surround themselves with yes men. Your Congress members will not hold town halls because they don't want to deal with the discomfort of being around people who are angry at them. So what we have to do is we have to find ways to break through that bubble. Social media is one of the best ways to do it, which is why you see a lot of very wealthy people purchasing social media right now, because it is very, very easy to get to a politician without a lot of money if you are good at social media. I can promise you that your politicians are Googling themselves. They want to know what the world is saying about them. They will look at their own name on Twitter. They love Twitter. I'm very sorry. They're all on Twitter. If you can stomach it, that's the way to get to them. But they will look for comments about themselves, and they will pay attention. When I worked at the Statehouse, even when 1 or 2 people had commented about one of my legislators online, they would come to me and they would be very nervous. And they're like, what do we do about these people? And it was only 2, but it felt like a lot because they knew it was public and they knew people were saying these things about them online. Another way to break through the bubble is we have to be creative about it. So like when I go to Matt Huffman's hometown, I tell people that he has to go grocery shopping in your neighborhood. So maybe you should be printing out flyers with his name and face on them and putting them on things that are expensive and letting people know that that's why those things are expensive. And you have to find creative ways to make sure the legislators see you. It's also why we still write letters to the editor, because reporters it's dying breed, and that's one of the reasons we're seeing less about legislators in the media, but the local legislator will look at their local paper and see what people are saying about them. Letters to the editor are often you talking to your politician directly, even if you're not able to convince a lot of people, because not as many people get that paper. Being the squeaky wheel is also incredibly effective in ways that mathematically don't make any sense. So when I worked at the Statehouse, there was a guy who would call once every couple days, and he really wanted this very specific tax credit for movie producers. And he would call all the time, and he was very polite, but we all knew what he wanted, and we all knew there was nothing we could do about it, and everybody hated answering that call. And long story short, Ohio now has that very specific movie producer tax credit because they didn't want to deal with him anymore. People will often do something because they don't want to deal with whatever's annoying them. The fact that people are human beings plays a lot into our strategy of how to be effective. Basically, you want to be a problem. You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be aggressive, you just have to be there all the time. You have to be present. They cannot be able to ignore you. So a lot of times when I give that part of the presentation, people will be like, yeah, that's not possible for me. I work in a job that I will get in a lot of trouble if I am a problem. What are the options for me? There are other options. So alternatives to being a problem. One is available to all of us, which is if you have an issue that is not a hot button topic, that's not in the news all the time, a niche issue, you can absolutely still get those things done in a bipartisan manner a lot of times at the Statehouse. For example, hearing aids for kids. That is a thing that was not in the news, it is not a hot button topic, and that was passed by Republicans and Democrats together to make Ohio a little bit better place. If you have an idea, if you have a bill idea based on your life, based on your career, based on something someone you love has experienced, if you bring that to a legislator, a lot of times that is how our bills get introduced and passed, is citizens with ideas. That is absolutely a possibility. Another thing you can do based on whatever field you work in, based on if your legislator is someone who's in your community, is if you build a relationship with a legislator, they might have the ear of the people in power. So if your community knows who the legislator is in the district and they're someone who's willing to talk to you, we used to have Republican legislators who would give out their cell phone number. That is less true now. But if that is an option for you based on whatever situation you're in, building that relationship, which gets you the ear of the person who has the ear of Matt Huffman, can be very effective. And then the last option, which a lot of nonprofits in Ohio and groups in Ohio have realized, is that their only option is to hire a lobbyist with Republican ties. So a lot of times in Ohio now, you will see tiny nonprofits where there's like 3 staffers and 2 of them are lobbyists because they know that that is their only option. They have to be able to get into those rooms, and this is because they can't be a problem. They have to go in and lobby. All right, so now we're going to actually talk about the process of how a bill becomes a law in Ohio. This is a very simple graphic showing you that it is exactly the same as you all learned about the federal government in junior high. There is a House, and there is a Senate, and there is a white man who signs stuff into law. It is very, very similar. And it is important to know that because a lot of times in the news you will see like Senate passes bill and you think that the bill is done. You think it's a done deal and there's nothing you can do. When actually the bill has a whole other chamber to go through, and it's important to pay attention to that. All right, so your bill, step 1, is introduced. It can be introduced usually in the House or the Senate, doesn't matter, just depends on which legislator cared enough to introduce it. Sometimes it's introduced in the House and the Senate because they want to show a lot of force. They want to show that the bill is super popular and that everybody wants to pass it. So they introduce it twice, once in the House and once in the Senate. And then bills also will keep their same number the whole 2-year term, the whole GA. So Senate Bill 1 that we just talked about, it started as Senate Bill 1, it stayed Senate Bill 1 when it went over to the House, and it is still Senate Bill 1 now. It never changed. It just shows you very quickly how far a bill has come. So if you see a Senate bill in the House, you know it came over from the Senate, it's already been there, it's really far along in the process. So step 2, once your bill's been introduced, it gets a committee assignment. This is actually where most of the magic happens, is in the committees. So a lot of times if a bill gets to the floor and gets a vote and gets press, it's pretty far along, it's too far to stop it. So we need to be paying attention to the bills when they're in this part, in the committee process. So a committee is just a group of legislators, they get together, they talk about bills in a certain issue area. So we've got a health committee, we've got an education committee, we've got an aging committee, we've got agriculture committee, anything you can think of. Whatever issues you're passionate about, you should be following the committees connected to those things. So one of the things I'm going to send you tonight is a document showing you how to sign up for these, what's called committee notice lists. It's literally just an email list where they will tell you anytime they're going to meet. They will tell you where they're going to be, what bills they're hearing, and what type of testimony they're accepting. I will also now, I'm going to walk you through it really fast because it helps to have seen it once as well. So this is a website I will send you. This is legislature.ohio.gov. All the committees are listed on there. I'm going to click the Senate committees first. They're all listed in alphabetical order. I truly recommend just going and scrolling through and picking whatever topics you're personally passionate about and signing up for those committees. Or if you guys are a group that meets regularly, you could assign different committees to different people and they can report back to the group. I have seen it done both ways. But I'm going to click on the Finance Committee here. This is a committee page. All the legislators are there. They're lovely faces. I'm sorry. You know Jerry, don't you? So this is a committee page. The chair of the committee is always listed first. The chair is the most powerful person in the committee. They decide everything. They decide which bills move and which bills die. They decide what testimony looks like, who gets to testify, everything. And on the Senate side, they are the person who you contact to be added to that committee notice list. So I'm going to click on Jerry Serino's face. I'm sorry. Here's his face. Okay, so here's Jerry's page. On the left there is his contact info. You can email him or call his office and just say, hey, please put me on the Senate Finance notice list. And then they will start sending you emails anytime that committee is going to meet. That is how you pay attention at the same level as all the reporters, as the same level as all the staff. So the House process is actually way easier. I don't know why the Senate has not figured this out yet. So it's the same website, legislature.ohio.gov. Click on a committee. Oh, they have a button. I don't know why the Senate has not figured out button technology yet, but it is very simple. You just go to whatever committee interests you, you click mailing list, and you sign yourself up for the committee notices. You will start getting emails anytime the committee is going to meet. You'll know before anyone else in the state which bills are moving, so you can rally people together. Remarkable how often they will give you a hearing to shut you up. And that matters. It really does, because every hearing is a chance to get the word out about your bill. Every hearing is a chance to get press coverage on your bill so that more people get passionate and fired up about it. Every time you get a hearing is a victory, even if you only get one, and then you have to start the process over. If you get that second hearing, you get to bring in experts and professionals to talk about the bill. You get to bring in parents and kids with emotional stories to tell, and then they get in the news, and that is how you get the word out. So every time you get that hearing is a victory. Another thing you can do as an advocate is call and tell them to stop moving forward with bills you don't like. It is, again, remarkable how often they will cancel bill hearings because they don't want to deal with us. They don't want to deal with protests. They don't want to deal with a room full of angry people in the same colored shirt. They don't want to deal with any of it. And so they will cancel a hearing for a couple weeks, and they will hope that you go away, that you move on to something else, that you lose interest or the press loses interest. They will try that tactic a lot. So a lot of times our strategy is to kill a bill hearing 1 week at a time for 2 years, and it works more often than it should. So I keep saying call a lot. Calling it's the best way to contact your legislators at the State House. There's obviously other ways to do it. You can email them, you can write letters, you can go visit them, you can tweet at them. I'm sorry, they're all on Twitter. But calling is the best because it's not like calling Congress. There is no fancy system where they enter all your data and you get kicked out if you give them the wrong zip code. It is not like that. It is literally just you and a staffer on the phone. So your goal is to take up that staffer's time. At the end of the day, you want that staffer to go to their boss and be like, oh my God, I got nothing done today because everyone hates that education bill. That is a victory at the Statehouse level. So it's important to know that there's not very many staffers. So if you call a lot, you're going to get the same people over and over again. You can really build that relationship with them. You want to be nice to the staff. Crucial key detail. Because if you build a relationship with them, they can be invaluable. They can give you meetings with their boss. They can help you get bills introduced. They can help you get inside information about your bill. We oftentimes have staffers call and say, hey, I know you care about that bill. I just heard in the hall it might move next week. You might want to get your people together. Being friendly with the staff is so, so important. And the best way to do that, obviously, to build that relationship is on the phone. Another reason to call the staff is because they will get your voicemails. Again, the system is not like Congress. They are not deleting everything in the morning and starting over again. There is only one phone line at each office at the Statehouse. So they have to listen to your voicemail because you and the lobbyists and the senators are all calling the same phone number. So what you want to do is you want to leave a phone number and a callback information, a callback request, and say, please give me a call back. I'd like to discuss this with you. Here is my contact info. It is amazing how often you'll get a call back from either the staffer or the legislator, because maybe only 5 or 10 people left their number that day. They can just call you on their drive home. It's a great test of whether or not you have a responsive legislator. Some legislators love to be the guy who calls everybody back, and some of them just instruct their staff to never answer the phone, and it's a great test of who you have representing you. Okay, another thing that's important to know, you can call people who do not represent you at the state level because there is so few people call the Statehouse that you might as well call. They will understand why you're doing it. For example, you can call the committee chair who has a committee with a bill you're really passionate about in that committee. Say, I'm calling about this bill in your committee, here's what I want to happen to it. You might get a staffer who's feeling like a jerk that day and they'll ask you for your zip code, but there is absolutely no reason why they asked you that. There's no system for them to enter it into. And you are still having the same psychological impact on them where they're thinking at the end of the day, oh my God, everybody called about that one stupid bill. And that is what they will tell their boss when their boss asks what they did that day. But obviously, if you are calling your own legislator, that is the most effective thing you can do. You want to really hammer home that you're in their district. You want to give them your zip code. You want to say, I'm a voter in this district. Make it really clear to them. Another thing we can do as Ohioans, we can come in and testify for or against bills at the Statehouse. So our goal is to testify in person if you possibly can. It is very effective to have a big crowded room for a testimony. The press loves that. They'll be drawn to those rooms, so you're more likely to get attention. It'll get on TV that way. You could potentially get a back and forth with the legislator. It's really, really good. But we make it very difficult. We tend to have hearings at like 10 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays, and I can't tell you when the hearing's going to end. I can only tell you when it starts. So you have to be able to give up a solid chunk of your day, especially you all having to drive down there. So it is something that is difficult. If you cannot get there in person, we do have the option to do written-only testimony. It is an official part of the process. Your testimony will officially be up on the website. It'll be part of the official record. It'll be in front of the legislators on these little like iPads they have in committee. The only thing is, I cannot promise you they'll read it. So I often tell people to take a little extra step if you're doing written-only testimony. Email it to all the committee members and say, hey, did you see this? I testified today. You should read it. Or post it on social media and let everybody in your network see that you testified to make just a little bit extra effort to get that written testimony read. So an important thing to know, you cannot just send in testimony whenever you want. You have to wait until they send out a notice saying that the committee is going to meet. So if you signed up for those committee notices that we just talked about, this is the kind of email you will get. They look like this. On the left, it'll tell you which bills they're about to hear. It'll tell you when and where they're going to be. And then it'll tell you what type of testimony they're accepting. If you get something like this in your email and you see that the bill you care about is up for a hearing, then that is your moment to shine. That is when you send in your testimony. And it is very, very important to know that, because if you don't get this notice, you can't just send it in whenever you want. And sometimes we will get notices very, very soon before the committee is set to begin. So if you have a bill that you're passionate about, that you think you want to testify on, write your testimony in advance so that you're just ready to go when you get the notice. The great thing is, though, that testifying is incredibly easy. The entire process for submitting testimony in the House is on this one slide. So you get the notice, you write your testimony, you email your testimony to the committee chair 24 hours before the hearing, and you also email them a witness slip. So it's just basic information about yourself. It tells them if you're a lobbyist, tells them if you're with a group or by yourself, and they will send you the witness slip with that committee notice email. But that is literally it. That's the whole process. You email your testimony and your witness slip to the committee chair the day before the hearing. You have just officially participated in Ohio government. We should all be doing it all the time. A lot of times I meet groups that do like testimony postcard parties, and I tell them to do testimony parties as well, where you get together and you make it fun. You have snacks and wine, and everybody writes a paragraph, and then you all go back to socializing. It can be that easy. The Senate process is actually even easier. So you write your testimony, you upload your testimony to the committee website, and you just fill out the information on the website. You don't have to deal with the witness slip. That is the entire process. It is so, so simple to be submitting testimony. We should all do it all the time. Another great thing about testifying is that the shorter the better, truly. A few sentences is totally fine. A few paragraphs is perfect. The pros, the lobbyists, they're only going to be writing a few paragraphs too. It does not have to feel like you have assigned yourself a term paper. It can be very, very short and still be very impactful. Although if you want to write pages upon pages, totally fine. Just know that if you go in person, they will likely cut you off at a couple minutes. So you want to get the thing that you really want to say out in the front of your testimony so that you can be sure to say that thing before you get cut off. This is another thing that I'll send you tonight. So this is a template. It'll just help you format your testimony so you can be sure that your testimony is laid out the same way the lobbyists are doing it. So I will send you this, and it also walks you through what happens after you testify as well. This is a reminder to tell you that recently we have started seeing a lot more attempts to stop people from testifying at the Statehouse, which is how I know that it matters. They would not care if we testified if it was not making a difference. The only reason they want us to not do it is because it matters. So we are starting to see things like invite-only testimony, or limited number of testimonies, or their new favorite is they will let everybody testify, but they will cut off testimony at like 3 hours, no matter how many people are left to talk, and they'll say, sorry, we had a set deadline of time. And so that sort of thing is incredibly frustrating. And we've been talking to some lawyers, and there does not seem to be a lot we can do legally about it. So instead, we have to be a problem. So this is an actual example from a couple years ago. These folks showed up to testify against a bill that was going to radically increase penalties for protesting at pipeline and drilling sites, so fracking protests. These folks showed up to testify against that bill. They were told that only a couple of them would be allowed to talk that day, and instead of just quietly accepting it and going home, they protested in the halls of the Statehouse. They got loud, they were chanting, and the press came running, because the press loves a ruckus. They want to know what's going on. And they interviewed these folks, they took photos of them, and what we ended up with was all these articles about the bill that would not have been written if they had just let those people talk. We have to show the legislators that we will be more annoying if they try to prevent us from participating in the government, in the process. So another way that you can participate is we have an amazing resource, ohiochannel.org. It is completely free, and all of the House and Senate sessions and committees are on there, live online, or they're also archived and you can watch them later. I will send you a document tonight that shows you how to pull video clips from this website. So like if you go in and testify, or you see a really powerful testimony and you want to pull it and put it online, that is something that you will now know how to do. This is a wonderful, completely free resource that we all have access to. So everything we just talked about was the committee process, because that is truly where most things happen with bills. Most of the changes are made in committee. Once a bill passes out of committee, because sometimes that does happen, it needs to get a full vote. So if it was in the House committee, it needs a full House vote. Some bills will actually get out of committee and then never reach the floor and just sit in limbo for 2 years, and then they die. If a bill gets to the floor, it's gonna pass the chamber. Matt Huffman does not do anything by surprise. If he lets a bill come up for a vote on the chamber, on the floor, he knows it's gonna pass. So once the bill passes one chamber, the House or the Senate, it then goes over to the other chamber, House or Senate, and gets a new committee assignment and does the whole thing again. People can come in and testify again, the whole process. There are absolutely ways that the legislators are finding to skip parts of this process. I will tell you that right now, but that is the traditional process for most bills. So another thing people need to know is that there are other ways to get involved at the Statehouse. One of the big ones is, I mentioned this earlier, a lot of our laws come from you guys. A lot of our laws come from Ohioans with ideas. You do not need to know how to write a bill yourself. All you need is a legislator who agrees to introduce it for you. They will get it drafted. They will get it introduced. All they need from you is the idea. Research helps, obviously. Having something to show them helps, but that's all you need. Also, there is a ton of power in sharing an article about state government on the internet. I know that sounds very, very basic, but think about it. Nobody shares articles about state government or bills at the State House. Everybody's sharing the same article about Donald Trump. If you become the person who shares one bill or one story about one bill, you quickly become the person that your entire network goes to for that information. It is so powerful to share one article about state level government, state news, state politicians online. This is an example of how you can make a huge difference. This is Madeline of Madeline's Law. So the reason that we have hearing aids for kids is because Madeline's family was having trouble paying for their hearing aids because their insurance wouldn't cover it. So they went and found a legislator who got that bill turned into a law. It truly can be you and your family experiencing something wrong and going to find a way to fix it at the legislature. All right, so a couple quick resources and then we'll get to Q&A. All right, so a lot of times people ask me, one, how to find a bill if they've read about it online, or how to see what their politicians are up to. And both of those answers are on this page. So it's that same website that I'll send you. It's legislature.ohio.gov. Click on legislation and search legislation. Don't worry, I'll send this to you. You can search by primary sponsor of bills. So you can just click on your legislator's name, and every bill they've introduced for the past 2 years will come up, and you can see what they've been up to. You can see if you agree with them or not, or if there's something you should be publicizing. You can also look by co-sponsor. So that is not a bill that your legislator wrote, but they agreed with it enough that they put their name onto it. They signed their name onto it as a co-sponsor. They should be held accountable for those bills too. And you can look up by previous years. If your legislator's been around for 40 years, you can look at everything they've been doing in past years. Or you can just look up by a bill number. So if you read about a bill in the paper, you want to know more about it, just type it into the keyword search here and the bill will come up. And this is what the bill page looks like. There's lots of fun things in there. But the thing I really want to show you is my favorite resource that we have at the state level, which is at the top left of this page, the Documents tab. You can click on the Documents tab. We have in Ohio, you can read all the bills if you want to, all the text is there, but sometimes they're very long and sometimes they are very intimidating. So we also have in Ohio a bill analysis for every bill. It is a bullet point, nonpartisan breakdown in plain English telling you what the bill would do if it becomes law. They are much more digestible, much more accessible to the public. So this is something that you can use if you need your community to understand what a bill would do, but you don't want to try and scare them into reading hundreds and hundreds of pages of bill. So I will send you a thing tonight that shows you how to find these wonderful bill analyses. This is what it looks like. They're so fun. Bullet points, way easier to read for us non-lawyers. All right, so a lot of times at this point in the presentation, people are feeling very overwhelmed, and I get that. So one of the things to know is that we are so blessed in Ohio to have just an incredible number of advocacy organizations, like the League of Women Voters, doing this work already. This is just a tiny, tiny sampling of some of the ones I work with most often. There are hundreds of them, and they are doing this work. They are in the State House. They are focused on bills. They are begging people to testify and make calls. All you have to do is follow them. Sign up for their email lists. Follow them on social media. They will tell you when stuff matters enough to make calls about, or send emails about, or testify. I will send you a list tonight of like 100 of my favorite organizations in the state, broken down by category, and you can just pick whichever ones interest you. Sign up for their emails, follow them online. They will help you figure out what needs action and when. All right, so we are right now, we are about a week away from the legislature coming back from their break. It's been very nice without them. And we are, so we are in the middle of a period right now where I can just show you how to track some bills rather than talking about key bills. Although if any of you have questions about certain bills, I'm happy to talk about literally any of them. So this is my website, ohiobills.wtf. I paid a couple extra dollars for the WTF because it makes me laugh and we need joy in our lives. So this is, it's just a bill track. It's just a Google Doc. I'm not fancy. So it goes to this Google Doc. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, again, we lay out our top priorities of the week, and you can just click on those and it'll give you action items. Or it lists out all the major bills that are moving, and you can pick whatever ones matter to you and focus on those. So I'm going to show you how it works. I'm just going to click on one here. Takes you lower down in the document, and it'll have articles about the bill. It'll give you a status update. It'll tell you actions to take. So sometimes I have scripts. Sometimes I have testimony templates. There's a letter to the editor template for that bill. So lots and lots of options. We try and make it as easy as humanly possible for you to take action at the state level. Okay, so now my voice is running out, and I will quickly give you a story about the power of activism, and then we'll take some questions. Okay, so remember I told you the only thing I need you to know is how powerful you are. This is a real story, but it does come with a trigger warning for sexual assault. So if you need to leave the room or plug your ears, I will not at all be offended. So in Ohio, until 2024, which is very, very recent, there was a loophole in our law that allowed for several types of rape to occur, spouse rape specifically. If your spouse was drunk or drugged or incapacitated, but force was not used, that was legal in Ohio until 2024. And obviously, there had been people trying to close that loophole for years, decades. And the bills never went anywhere. They just died immediately. So the press stopped writing about them because the press got bored. They knew the bills weren't going to go anywhere. So it just repeated over and over again this cycle of this still being allowed and no one doing anything about it. And then in 2019, we had a legislator, Kristen Boggs, who always introduced these bills, but she introduced an amendment on the floor to close the rape loophole. It was voted down immediately, like it always was. But this time, people were paying attention. There were activists who had been watching because they had made this their issue. They had decided to publicize this and get mad about it online. And so they took this and they ran with it. They posted everywhere. They started calling their legislators and demanding to know why they would vote against something so simple. They started calling the press and demanding to know why no one was writing about this. And all of a sudden, articles all over the state. We ended up with tons and tons of articles about the rape loophole as though it were new, when actually the only thing that changed was somebody paid attention long enough to notice what was happening at the Statehouse and got mad, and the press followed the public outrage. So from there, we ended up with our first ever bipartisan bill to close the rape loophole. First time a Republican and Democrat had ever done it together. Both women. Mm-hmm. It went nowhere. It died immediately, but it was the first time. Then the next GA, we had our first ever 2 bipartisan bills to close the rape loophole, and men were involved, and one in the House and one in the Senate. First time that had ever happened. And then finally, in the year of our Lord, 2024, they finally were able to pass this bill, and Ohio has now banned all forms of rape in our state. That is outrageous. It is insane that it took that long, and I guarantee you're sitting there like, do I clap? And let's see. The thing is, it never would have happened without activists. It never would have happened without somebody getting mad on the internet and going to their legislators and going to the press and demanding that this be the thing that somebody paid attention to. That is all it took. So all you have to do is be willing to lose a lot for a while, and you will get your thing done, I guarantee it. Okay, so if any of this interested you, I am on every social media platform that exists. I will find you and make you care about the Statehouse. And if you hate the internet, which a lot of people do, I have an email list now on Substack, so I send out email updates as well. We try to make it as easy as humanly possible because, again, there is power in just sharing an article about state government. And If you want to help me pay for gas, that'd be cool. And then, okay, so remember, the only thing I need you to remember after tonight is how much power there is at the state level. If you remember nothing else, but you know that you can get something done in state government, I will feel like this was a victory for me tonight. So I know this is a ton of information. I really appreciate you listening to it, and I will gladly take your questions now. Thank you all so much.
All right, we have a couple questions, or a few questions here, Rachel.
Great.
The first one is, what percentage of bills actually get passed?
Ooh, that's
Bills
a
that are
great
introduced,
question.
what percentage get passed?
You know, it's a large percentage of the Republican bills get passed and not a lot of the Democratic bills. I don't know the exact number. I will also tell you that the legislature's favorite statistic is that like 85% of their bills that pass are nonpartisan, which sounds really good until you realize that most of the bills they pass are like road naming bills. There's not a lot of detailed policy bills that get passed every year, but I do not know an exact percentage. That'd be really interesting to map out this year.
Who actually writes the bill so it fits with existing laws?
Yeah, great question. So Ohio's actually really lucky on this because a lot of states don't have this. We have an entity called the Legislative Service Commission. They are nonpartisan. They're mostly lawyers. They're hired by the state. They write the bills for us. So they are not allowed to tell you if they think a bill will work. They can only write down how it will work based on what they've been given by the legislator. You cannot contact them directly. They are magical and they only talk to the legislators. So that's why you need a politician to agree to introduce the bill for you. They will go to LSC and have it drafted. LSC is also the group that writes those bill analyses that I was talking about. They do just so much work. They are like the unsung heroes of the state.
Can I do a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
There have been bills that, maybe they're issues, which is different than a bill. Like you have
Maybe.
issues like the gerrymandering.
Oh yes, okay, you're asking about gerrymandering issue on the ballot?
It was written so badly, and there are many of them that are like
Yes,
that.
great question. So that is not written by LSC. Those oftentimes, usually, are things that people have gone, and I imagine some of you did this, collected signatures, thousands, hundreds of thousands of signatures to place something on the ballot. Citizens in Ohio have the right to do that. We can either go and try and change the law, or we can try and change the state constitution. Those do not have to be written by LSC. They can be written by whoever's collecting the signatures. So sometimes you will get something on the ballot that is not written the way you think it should be written, that is not written the way probably lawyers would have written it, and that is because it's coming from the public.
Specifically, Frank LaRose writing.
Yeah, oh yeah, Frank LaRose. Okay, so this question, so once your thing gets on the ballot, or gets to the point where you collected enough signatures that you officially are allowed to be going to the ballot, there's a next step called the ballot board, which is a series of legislators and a couple other people who they decide whether or not it's right, if it's like legally viable, and they also they're supposed to just write the little bit of language, the paragraph that goes on the official ballot to explain what it would do, the summary. In the last couple of years, the ballot board has become a partisan entity. It has become a place where they change the language to try and confuse voters if they don't agree with the thing. That has never happened until the past 5 years. And it's been really troubling because in our Constitution it says that the summary has to be nonpartisan and just an explanation of what the thing would do. And we have seen, unfortunately, with gerrymandering, they then went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, which is also partisan, ruled in favor of changing the ballot language. So yeah, that has become a fight over partisanship where the people who control the ballot board now have a lot more power than they used to. Yeah. That was a polite way of saying that, I think.
I believe yeah, it is. Never know. The ballot commission is actually bipartisan, but
They are supposed to be,
Frank LaRose
yes.
has the tie-breaking vote as
Yes.
the Secretary of State. So if he's so inclined, he can make it partisan.
Yeah.
We have some more questions.
Sure.
At the beginning, you talked about the fund that had, you said, I think it was on the slide,
Mhm.
$1 billion had been taken away from it.
Yes.
Where did the money come from for the local funding fund, or the local I can't read that.
The local government fund. Yeah. That's a great question.
Why isn't it replenished?
Yeah. So
And how can we get it?
so I have another training if you guys want to do another training on the state budget. So every 2 years, in odd numbered years, Ohio passes a massive multi-billion-dollar budget where they decide what to do with your tax dollars, essentially. It's mostly your tax dollars. Some of it is money that comes from the federal government, but most of it is like sales tax and income tax and taxes on all the like cigarettes and all of that. And they get all this money and they decide what to do with it. So it is really a priorities document where they decide what matters most to the state. And oftentimes I and the legislature disagree on what our priorities should be. And in 2011, so there's a part of that budget called the local government fund that is supposed to be your tax dollars that are allocated back to the communities for things like pothole repair and local infrastructure. And in 2011, they decided to take that money, almost entirely all of it, and put it into other parts of the state budget. And it's their ability, their prerogative to do that. And that money has never been replaced. They have slowly, like, tiny partial percentages wise put a little bit back, but almost $1 billion per year is still missing from it, from what we were getting in 2010 back from the state, of our own tax dollars. So about $1 billion a year has to be made up by your communities by doing things like levies on the ballot every month, or not fixing the potholes as well, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's your money. It's your money. They just.
How do we get it back?
We are going to, in the next budget cycle, which will be 2027, we will have to fight to demand that they restore the local government fund. And it's going to have to be we tried to do it this past year, and there was fights over like local school funding and that kind of thing that became the bigger fight. But yeah, it'll have to be a budget fight in 2027.
Okay, another question. If you post written testimony on social media,
Mm-hmm.
do you tag your representatives?
Ooh, I love that idea. Yes. Make sure you also send it in officially. So like make sure you also do the thing where you email it to the committee chair and you send them a witness slip. But then yes, if you're doing the extra step of posting your testimony online, I love that idea. Tag your legislator on social media wherever you possibly can. Love that idea.
When we testify, or send testimonials while a bill is in committee, how often does it result in changes to the language of the final version of the bill? Does it actually affect what they end up with?
A lot of times, yes. Unfortunately, like the hot button topics that we all see in the news all the time, like I guarantee a lot of you went in and testified on redistricting on the maps. They will often not listen in a way that I think they should. But a lot of times on bills that are not front page news, they will listen to testimony and they will make changes, especially if in addition to your testimony, you're also like calling the office and emailing them and saying, hey, this thing doesn't make a lot of sense, or this thing won't work because of this thing I know about. A lot of times you can get changes made to bills. It's just unfortunate that the ones that are in the news all the time, that is like a done deal because they've already decided how those bills are going to turn out. But really, in a niche issue, and you can get stuff done. And it's still worth going, even if you're going to lose the fight. Absolutely.
Is there any entity that oversees specific actions of legislators for illegal activities and unethical activities?
Yes. So in a couple ways, like there's an entity that you can go to if the politicians, when they're campaigning, have broken campaign finance laws. But I mean, one of the big check is supposed to be you sue and it goes to the state Supreme Court. And the problem has become that the state Supreme Court currently, they have just been kind of green lighting a lot of the things that the legislature does in a way that I do not personally agree with. So that is unfortunately the major check is the Supreme Court, which I think people are feeling frustrated about at the federal level as well. Yeah.
When you say you sue, do you mean an individual or
It
is
can
that an
be.
organization?
A lot of times it's an organization, like the ACLU of Ohio
Right.
is oftentimes the entity that sues. Planned Parenthood sues a lot over reproductive rights issues, but sometimes it can be a person, and you would just need to find an attorney who can help you. I am not an attorney. But yeah, a lot of times it's a group. You're absolutely right. And sometimes groups like the ACLU will look for people to be the plaintiff. They'll look for, they did that with redistricting actually. They looked for people who were going to be personally hurt by maps to be, yeah.
The League of Women Voters of Ohio
Yes.
has sued, and I think we joined on the gerrymandering
Yes.
ballot language question. So
I kind of
we're-
wondered if there was anything internal that they, of course, that, I can only imagine how awful that could get. But anyway, never mind.
Oh, it's a good question. And we sometimes deal with individual lawsuits. Like, there was a big Supreme Court case last year. I'm sorry, I'm going off topic. There was a guy who got hurt by a chicken wing. You may have heard about this one. A boneless chicken wing in Ohio that was labeled as boneless but had a bone in it, and it ripped his throat out, and he had to have like incredible amounts of surgeries, and he nearly died. And he sued by himself. He sued the company for mislabeling their wings, and the Ohio Supreme Court ruled against him. They ruled that boneless is just a phrase. It doesn't have to mean boneless.
Because they're spineless.
Yes. So that was an individual.
So, going back to your psychology roots,
Yes.
your psych major, if a legislator, is elected and is now part of the legislature, if they're not there to make changes, to make lives better, are they, what do you think they're there for? Are they there for power, to have an easy time, for health insurance, for what, just curiosity?
The
A
opinion-
question about your opinion from a psychologist.
The opinion of the speaker does not reflect the opinion of the League of Women Voters. So there's a couple reasons. One, it is a good paying job. It comes with benefits. There's a pay bump if you're on a committee. So that is actually a thing. But I think a lot of people see, which is very frustrating for me as someone who believes most of the power is in state government, a lot of people see the legislature as a stepping stone to a higher office. A lot of people will go to the legislature because they want to be governor. And it's very frustrating because you can see those people. You can see the ones who are there because they care about policy, and you can see the ones who are there because they want to run for the next thing next week. And there's a difference in those people. I always say that the people who don't want to be in politics are the ones who should be in politics. If you find a legislator who like really hates politics and they don't know why they're here, but they want to make the world a better place, they're the one you should vote for. So a lot of times it's that. And then there's also, I think there is, people like to feel, you know, it's cool to be it's elected official. You know, it's to be a senator. That's a big term, and so it makes people. I think there's a power thing to it, but a lot of it, unfortunately, is stepping stone.
Is the Fair School funding plan, is it dead, or where does it stand now?
So the Fair School Funding Plan, which valiant effort, everyone, was part of our fight in this most recent state budget. Unfortunately, at the moment, yes, it is set. And the Fair School Funding Plan, for folks who don't know, was a bipartisan effort, Republicans and Democrats on that, to fund our schools in a constitutional manner, which has not been done in my lifetime. And they had this detailed plan. They worked with experts and tax professionals, and it was incredibly intricate. Tons of work went into it. And in order to make it actually work, it would have to be passed over 3 different budget cycles, so 6 years, in order to get it fully implemented. We were this past year on phase 3, the 3rd budget cycle, and Matt Huffman decided that he did not want the Fair School Funding Plan to become law, therefore it is not law. He is singularly responsible for that. There were a lot of Republican legislators in rural areas who really wanted the Fair School Funding Plan because rural areas don't often have other types of schools. They don't often have charters and voucher schools. They don't have the religious schools. They have the local public high school that everybody goes to, and on Friday night you all go to the high school football game, and it's like part of the community. Those legislators desperately wanted the Fair School Funding Plan, and Matt Huffman had to convince them to allow him to not pass it by promising them that he would give them money to build private and charter schools in their districts. Which he is attempting this next year. He's planning to test the limits of the law. He's going to try to build buildings. He's going to try and build buildings in these areas and then say, I don't know what's happening in those buildings. I don't know who bought the building. It's going to be a lawsuit, I guarantee it, because that is what's coming next, is he had to promise the legislators. So yeah, at the moment, Fair School Funding Plan is dead. Doesn't mean forever, but it does mean we have a new fight on our horizon now.
Okay, last question I've got.
First a comment, great presentation, Rachel.
Thanks.
And the question is, and I think you kind of went over it quickly, how are you funded?
I'm not. So I have another job, and I have an LLC, so I can accept like donations for gas and stuff. But yeah, it's fun. I just do this because I'm passionate about it. And my actual job, I'm the policy director at Honesty for Ohio Education. If you're passionate about education, they're incredible. I'm so honored to work for them. So I do have a job. It's just not this.
All right, we have that. We have something for you real quick. Forgot to get that. Is there any other questions? We can take those.
Oh yeah, we're doing good on time. Any other questions? Yes.
Just a clerical, if we've registered online, does that automatically mean we'll get your packet?
I believe so. So if they register online, you have their
Yeah.
email address.
We have your email's address, so once we get it from Rachel, we'll forward it on. It might take a couple days, but we'll get it out to you all. All right, well, we wanna,
I just have a quick question. That
Sure.
The witness slip.
Yes.
Does that get mailed to you, or is that part of that?
In the email where they announce the hearing, they will also send you a link to
At
the
the
witness
same
slip.
time,
Yeah,
so
at the same time. It's a
to send the
PDF.
testimony and to send that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's very quick. It's like half a page.
Sure.
You tell them if you're a lobbyist, that kind of thing.
Okay, I just didn't know if it was later you sent one, and you sent them in.
No, that's a great question. They used to be a lot more complicated until they figured out how to put them on the internet. Now it's better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think we have any more questions. Rachel, thank you so
Oh,
much for
thank you.
coming. We have a
Thank you
small
so much.
gift there. Geauga.